Where am I? What's going on?
Today, for many people, YouTube is synonymous for gaming and the vast array of different content creators on the platform. Look back to the late 90s and you'll find that there was nothing in terms of the variety that we have today. However, in 1999, a company founded by Michael L. Bussler from USA Live was the platform for the very first internet game show, The Game Room, making history.
Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Game Room. I'm Dave, that's Mark, and today we've got a story that winds the tale of deceit, disease, and deformations, and all kinds of good stuff like that.
Yay!
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Deformation, diseases.
Hosted by Mark Bussler and David Crusson, 1999's The Game Room initially focused on the then current new releases, the Sega Dreamcast, Sony PlayStation 1, and the Nintendo 64. The review format usually consisted of the two presenters sat in front of a blue screen, with the graphics relevant to whatever jokes or gameplay that was being displayed behind Mark and Dave on that particular episode. And while each episode was usually under 10 minutes, they weren't the most in-depth in terms of analysis, mainly focusing on how much fun a said game was, rather than critique towards graphical fidelity, gameplay, controls, etc. The two presenters were undeniably entertaining to watch and had some fantastic video reviews to look back on, especially the reviews for Robotron for the Nintendo 64 and Seaman for the Sega Dreamcast.
We're the shit. And today we're doing a game which is also the shit.
We're actually doing two games. One of them is the shit. One of them isn't as much the shit as the other one is the shit.
Actually, the other one is actually shit. So.
Yeah. I guess so. It is actually shit.
It is actually just shit.
Okay.
Based off of a game which is the shit. Robotron 2084 has 2,084 reasons this game is the shit.
And that's the original shit.
So, I guess the first one is on the Nintendo 64, a system which overall is very shitty, but this game just happens to be the shit on this shit system.
And it's amazing how the shit got reversed, because, you know, the PlayStation's supposed to be the shit, and then the N64 is a piece of shit. That's what, you know, that everybody says. Now, the thing about it is that the Robotron version that's on the shit system, PlayStation, is shit, while the piece of shit system has the shit version of Robotron.
You suck.
So does your mother. How is your father's health?
Good.
He passed away.
Sure. Hey, Seaman!
What the hell is going on out there?
Fuck you! He's very docile.
As time went on, the Game Room reviewed older retro titles such as Bionic Commando for the NES and Streets of Rage for the Sega Mega Drive. Although the older titles which were covered on the Game Room were starting to pull a larger audience, the restrictive $50 budget and slow inconsistent production rate of the show ensured that the Game Room was just a minor blip on the fast evolving internet landscape. After reviewing Tokyo Extreme Racer 2 for the Sega Dreamcast, the Game Room was cancelled in the late 2000s due to low revenue.
First thing I noticed about this game is how much deeper it is than the original. You can make all these modifications to your car to make it drive better that actually make a difference. Now, that one of the only games I've noticed that in is, like, you know, Sega GT or Gran Turismo. This one actually takes into account the modifications you make, doesn't laugh at you, and makes your car that much better. But I do have a big problem with this game. The money you earn is BS.
Well, it's just, you can't, this isn't one of those games where you can have this flock.
You have to win at least 100 times to get a new car.
You can't have a fleet of cars. It's expensive. Serious. Buying new cars is expensive. Modifying them is expensive. They do make differences. However,
you will not get all the cars unless you play this game for at least a year.
No, this game takes a while. Thank God it's addictive for that.
Yes.
But my point here, I had a point, and it's banging around in there somewhere. Where was my point? Where was it? Bear with me. What the f was I just gonna say?
On February the 10th, 2007, Mark Bussler would return to the internet gaming scene with YouTube and the start of the classic game room. During the 7-year gap between the cancellation of the game room and the creation of the then classic game room YouTube account, Mark Bussler was actually very busy with the work that the independent DVD market was providing him. He produced such works as Expo, The Magic of the White City, and Westinghouse, and these were with Hollywood actors Gene Wilder and Richard Gervais. Unfortunately, Dave did not return back to the classic game room and found a substantial career in pharmaceuticals after the game room initially ended. During the transition period between 2007 and 2008, Bussler was experimenting with the re-uploads of the older game room episodes and providing then current vlogs to announce that the classic game room was beginning to take fruition on the YouTube platform. This period of experimentation was brought on by the then declining DVD market and the lack of work that Mark Bussler was experiencing during this time period. With access to powerful production house editing systems and years of background in film, Bussler brought back a gaming show from the dead, firing on all cylinders. This was during a time when the majority of YouTube uploads were low quality, captured gameplay from a video camera pointed at a CRT TV screen, and let's not forget the content creators that frequently use Dreamscape by 009 sound system as an intro song. Understandably, Classic Game Room was a massive hit and was instantly one of the most popular gaming channels on the internet and on YouTube. This period was called the HD era of the Classic Game Room, when the show was at its peak. Reviews initially consisted of Mark narrating over the gameplay footage, with his usual dry humour, giving a viewer enough information with regards to the quality of the game, while the overall video production was some of the best seen on YouTube at this time period.
Intersection, turn left.
Now that's a GPS that's easy on the ears. She's a lot less irritating than that voice screaming at you in Ridge Racer 7. Excuse me, GPS, what are the directions to your heart? That's right, this is Magnum CGR.
Another factor that boosted Classic Game Room's popularity was its coverage of new releases in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and retro gaming, a feature that the original Game Room started way back in 1999. So if you were a gamer in the late 2000s and early 2010s, this was undoubtedly one of the best ways to view gaming and console reviews on YouTube during this time period. So why years later is the first internet gaming show no longer an ongoing production? Let's find out.
Gotta get those brakes checked. I meant to stop and not run these people over. Hey, this thing's got a CD player in it. Let's see what the Ultor troops listen to.
I don't deserve to die!
You can run, but you can't escape the disco.
Like with any consistent YouTube content creator, Classic Game Room started with a minor following, steadily gaining subscribers year on year. In 2008, 434 subscribers. 2009, 14,000. 2010, over 65,000. And in 2011, seeing another large jump to well over 135,000 subs. Between 2009 and 2011, Mark would aggressively expand the CGR empire with multiple classic Game Room YouTube accounts: CGR Walkthroughs, CGR Undertow, CGR Overboard, CGR Trailers, CGR Pinball, CGR Garage, CGR Toys, and CGR Comics. And that's not forgetting the news segments integrated into the original Classic Game Room channel, CGR News and CGR Interviews. While CGR Undertow found some success, with that channel eventually breaking the 100,000 subscriber threshold, the rest of the CGR channels didn't really find an audience and they were eventually abandoned. CGR Garage would later be renamed Seatropica Webcomic and now only upload short drawing clips. CGR Trailers would stop including game trailers altogether and be a channel purely for spamming 1-minute CGR reviews.
Skating away! Woo!
CGR Toys stopped uploading in 2013, CGR Comics would later change into CGR Infinity, CGR Pinball would stop uploading in October 2012, and CGR Overboard, which uploaded its first video in July 2011, would later be abandoned the very same year, with the final video being the Age of Zombies review for the iPhone in September 2011, a mere few months since the creation of the CGR Overboard account. It would be the original Classic Game Room and CGR Undertow channels which would pull in the strongest amount of engagement on YouTube. During the post-2010 era, the quality of these uploads on all channels was very hit and miss. Derek on Undertow was a decent presenter and seemed to have a genuine passion for gaming, but Gabe, who also provided game reviews on CGR Undertow, was probably one of the worst reviewers on that channel. The CGR Undertow review of Call of Duty Finest Hour on the GameCube is just plain embarrassing. It's clearly evident that Gabe did absolutely no prior research before recording the voiceover on the review. He didn't explain any of the core gameplay dynamics, narrative, or anything noteworthy of the game that may warrant anybody investing time and money into playing it. Bizarrely, Gabe did absolutely nothing but moan and whinge that it doesn't feel like a modern Call of Duty title, and this particular game's storyline is depressing. It's a bloody war game, of course it's going to be depressing.
The other reason that this game just doesn't feel like a Call of Duty game is its story. While most of the other Call of Duty games feature stories that vary between action-packed and depressing, this game never really gets out of the latter category. The game's campaign plays out in an extremely dark tone. Now I feel like putting on a little bit of The Cure and sitting in a room with the lights off.
Another odd quirk to the CGR Undertow reviews is that the majority of the video clips used within these review segments all seem to take place during the very first few levels of the said game being reviewed, giving the impression that these uploads were lazily put together simply to provide content and gain YouTube engagement for the channel in a short space of time. Here's another example. This atrocious review of Splinter Cell for the original Xbox was also produced by Gabe on CGR Undertow. This review is only 3 minutes and 55 seconds long. The majority of the footage consists of the training level area and Gabe running around like a loon in a stealth game, and then whinging he's dying by constantly jumping into fire.
Now, Splinter Cell is also quite a bit more difficult than later games in the series, and this might turn off some newcomers. Levels don't always make it clear what you're supposed to do, which is fine, but the wrong way can lead to death. By fire. It took me a very long time to tell that I wasn't supposed to jump across the fire. They shouldn't put a plank of wood there if you're not supposed to go across.
Some of the uploads created by Derek on CGR Undertow were a little bit better than Gabe's. The general consistency though overall was very erratic, with some of the gameplay still showing footage from the very first few levels of the said game being reviewed. Now, there could be an argument that he may not want to show spoilers, but the CGR era from 2010 onwards just feels more like a money-making machine, spamming new channels and videos in such a short space of time that it required a full-time job just to keep up with all of the content, which was very inconsistent in quality, so why bother shifting through all of the crap?
Hey there everybody, this is Ray Carcillo with Classic Game Room and the brand new CGR News. That's right folks, the Empire has expanded once again. Folks, every day now you can go to CGR News and check out the best news available on the web about the video games. That's right folks, it's all about CGR doing it again, bringing you the best there is in terms of content. And I'm going to be spearheading this channel. But don't worry, I'm sure Derek and Kevin will find their way over there sometime soon as well.
In my own personal opinion, I think the passion seemed to be waning somewhere within the CGR offices. I get the impression that Mark was expanding way too fast and have to balance out the overheads with the frequent bombardment of uploads regardless of the quality control.
Anyway, that's our big news story for today. For Classic Game Room News, no, we just got the laptop. It's brand new. No, come on.
Giving an insight towards the production schedule at CGR, Derek from Undertow gave an interview with fellow YouTuber SuperGainsBros in 2018.
Classic Game Room, while I was there, it was an interesting time for the Classic Game Room entity because it was right around the time Mark decided, hey, let's turn this into a business.
Right.
So I came in right at the beginning of that. They were really expanding. Mark had some financial backing. So Classic Game Room was very much a small business for several years. So it wasn't just Mark. In fact, Mark didn't reach out to me at all. It was some of the office people at Classic. And it was kind of blasphemy to a lot of people when I started there because I came from the sort of written journalism world.
Right.
So I frequented, that's a hard word, sites like IGN and stuff like that. I wasn't a YouTube guy, so I'd never even heard of Classic Game Room.
Right.
So a lot of people were freaking out, like, "Oh, I can't believe you got a job at Classic Gamer." I'm like, I have no idea what this is, but it wasn't long before I learned what a big deal it was and the kind of community around it. So you learned pretty quickly once you got there that this was a big deal.
How many people were doing videos on CGR Undertow at its like biggest?
At our biggest, which was probably around 2012. We had, close to a dozen people working there.
Okay.
I would say 8 or 9 doing video. I could be wrong. Maybe around 10 actually. Because what was happening was the kind of credo at Classic Game Room, and one of the things that took me a while to get used to because I wasn't used to this kind of approach was content, quantity was a big deal.
Right.
So, for example, at our peak, I was doing like 3 videos a day. I mean, we were just by myself, we were doing 50. I was doing like 12 to 15 videos a week. And the thought was we're just going to get a lot of content out there and just build an audience. If it were up to me, I wouldn't have done quite so many videos because I had a lot of headaches, but it certainly paid off. We built an audience pretty quickly, and there were at our peak there were a lot of people, and the idea was they brought me in to kind of be the host, and when it took off, it started to grow, and it grew to the extent that hey, we can bring in more people. There were people. A guy from New York brought in Ray Carcillo, who actually wrote for EGM for a couple years after his time at Classic Game Room. He came in. We had a lot of really cool talent come through that door.
Yeah. Okay. And so you guys were posting, I believe, I'm trying to remember back. It was about every day, or it was like just weekdays, or there was a lot of content. I do remember coming out.
Every day. At our peak, it was 3 videos a day during the week.
That's right.
And then usually 2 on the each weekend. So Saturday there'd be 2, and Sunday there'd be 2, but 3 a week during the week at our peak.
And was that with just CGR Undertow, and then Classic Game Room was also doing videos at the same time?
Yeah, we were 2 separate kind of entities.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were doing just on our end on CGR Undertow. We were doing 3 videos a week. Not to mention again at our peak around 2012, 2013, they were really expanding into other channels. So they tried a third channel
That's right.
called CGR Overboard. They started a news channel. They started a gameplay channel. They really wanted to branch out and build this up. So yeah, just on the Undertow side, we were doing, not a math guy, like 20 videos a week.
Yeah.
Then the other channels were all doing a ton of content as well. So it was a really busy time.
Unfortunately, the original CGR channel from 2010 onwards was also starting to show the cracks. Intros started to get more self-indulgent, and video reviews started to reference Truxton and the Vectrex way too much and got old very quickly.
Truxton! Truxton! The new lighter, slimmer PlayStation 4 system, complete with a 1 terabyte hard drive and DualShock 4 controller. Enjoy all the greatest games, TV, music, and more. Alright, but does it play Truxton? Oh my gosh!
Like, if you could hold hands with your Sega Genesis, wouldn't you? Long walks in the park while rocking the Truxton.
I'm gonna fill this space with more Genesis games. I have plenty, but only one Truxton. Thank you for sending Truxton, and thank you to Truxton for just being Truxton. Do you like Truxton? Then more Truxton!
Wipeout Omega Collection is a good game, but not as good as me. Well, that's what I would expect it to say. If it's good enough for Truxton.
Truxton! Tetsugen! More Truxton! What, like Van Halen? ZZ Top? I don't know. Let's find out. Why, it must be Truxton.
More specifically, that douchebag who runs the show and always goes, Truxton, Truxton, I love Truxton.
Who would win in a fight between a Sega Genesis with a 32X adapter and the Vectrex?
Answer carefully.
Okay.
What's better?
It's terrifying.
Nintendo 64 or the Vectrex?
Oh, man.
Enough. Just look at it. Look at it. Who's texting me in the middle of recording? Oh. It's Truxton. Atari versus Nintendo, or Vectrex versus Nintendo, and Nintendo usually loses, but you could have taken that space and added Truxton, for example.
This is probably your best option if you want to play Nintendo Switch games with the Vectrex overlay.
Vector. Man, perhaps the sequel should be on a vector-based game console. The Vectrex, perhaps? Welcome to Classic Game Room. It's Atari Week. It's the review of the Atari Jaguar. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it named after a cat? It is named after a cat, but is it better than the Vectrex Turbo Panther?
The somewhat witty, dry humour from the previous CGR videos was starting to slide into an annoying babble of loud noises, cringeworthy references and adverts for CGR merchandise.
Classic Game Room, it appears that Fuzzix on Twitter has sent me a picture of beer in the Classic Game Room drinking glass, and his avatar is the punk rocker from Star Trek 4. So, there's only one thing to do in this situation. Fuzzix, cheers! Have a good weekend. It's a beautiful thing. Outer space never tasted so good. Classic Game Room barware is at classicgameroom.com, and my books, Surf Panda, Jesus the Coked Up Chicken #2, and Retro Megatrex. ClassicGameroom.com.
Let's compare the Gran Turismo 5 Prologue review from 2008 with the Gran Turismo 6 review from 2014. Mark seems to be more focused on delivering spectacle and being quirky than providing a journalistic review.
This is Gran Turismo 5 Prologue for the PlayStation 3. We finally get a Gran Turismo game on the PS3, and this game is phenomenal, but it's not perfect. The Gran Turismo series has been one of my favorite video game series since 1998 when I got the first one for my PlayStation 1.
banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the intergalactic space arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. It's the review of Gran Turismo 6 on Classic Game Room. Gran Turismo 6, yeah, it's good. And an El Camino makes it even better.
This is part one of a two-part review. I'm starting with the game basics at this point, and part two will go into the online play and the advanced car selection. The menus in this game are very bizarre, and they're really bad. It's like they tried to do too much and make it too fancy with the menus. When you're trying to select the color for your car, they're automatically changing the camera angles, and it's just very distracting. I don't care for that. These are the 6 tracks that they give you. Some good ones. You have Suzuka, Fuji, Daytona. I don't care for the London track very much, but I never like those city tracks with lots of shadows. The game has your arcade mode and then your standard simulation mode.
But there's other cars too, not that you'll need to drive any of them, like the Corvette, which is being hit by the El Camino here. And how about this? That's right, the El Camino can do anything. Better than most of these fancy cars, that's for sure. But hey, let's talk about cars, because Gran Turismo has a lot of them. Everything from the El Camino all the way to the Lamborghini Countach, and everything in between, including the Camaro and Firebird. And a bunch of other cars that nobody really cares about. If it doesn't have a giant bird on the hood, it sucks. Unless it says El Camino on the side, of course, and you know what you get if you combine an El Camino and a Firebird? The Fire Camino!
Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to 2013, where Mark would rename his YouTube channel from Classic Game Room to Lord Karnage, changing his intro to promoting a comic book character he created.
This review has been approved by Lord Karnage.
Personally, I think this was a very odd decision by Bussler, as CGR was still a strong brand name, holding at around 260,000 subscribers. Changing the main channel to a drawing that he created would only confuse his audience and risk potential future engagement with anybody searching for Classic Game Room, only for them to find and see Lord Karnage in the search results. Anyway, on the 12th of December 2013, Mark surprised a lot of people within the YouTube community. He announced that he would stop uploading main CGR episodes to YouTube due to issues with Content ID and restrictions with revenue on YouTube. Bussler expected the majority of his viewers to go over to his own website and then to Dailymotion, a website with a much lower user base compared to YouTube. The lack of business acumen is astounding. It didn't work. Within the first quarter of 2014, Bussler would announce he would be returning back to YouTube.
Welcome to Classic Game Room, broadcasting from the Intergalactic Space Arcade, where I have some big news. Saturday, May 10th, the Classic Game Room video game review show will return to YouTube to celebrate N64 Week, an entire week of Nintendo 64 games. Here's an N64 right there.
All of the content that was originally exclusive to Dailymotion would now be uploaded to the Lord Karnage YouTube account later in 2014. And despite the back and forth between websites, the cringeworthy Truxton jokes, the spamming of merch and renaming his channel to Lord Karnage, CGR still managed to gain well over 340,000 subscribers throughout 2014. His website, classicgameroom.com, would have went through many different guises over the years, with viewers still submitting user reviews, and sending in games, consoles and other gaming related stuff from Mark to review in his YouTube channel. One of the more prevalent viewers and regular donators would be Mohammed from Qatar, being a regular contributor towards the show and would later get an interview from Mark on his main Classic Game Room YouTube channel.
Hi CGR fans, I saw Mohammed from Qatar.
Unfortunately, just a year later, 2015, would see Mark Bussler announce that he would be cutting back on the production of CGR and cancel the 5-year run of CGR Undertow, once again citing issues with overhead costs and revenue generated through YouTube.
Like a lot of you, I'm also a fan of Classic Game Room. I like the style and the format of the show. I really haven't changed it all that much since it started, even though the internet has changed a lot around it, and I'm not interested in adapting the show to the modern internet. If I can't do it the way it is, I'm not doing it, period. Now thankfully I can continue the show as a hobby. I have thousands upon thousands of games that fans around the world have sent to the show, and while people tend to thank me for introducing you to new games and old games and things like the Vectrex and Truxton and old Atari games, I have to thank you for introducing me to a lot of this stuff. Like these awesome packages would just show up with like ColecoVision games and some obscure Vectrex game I've never heard of and some weird controller and obsolete piece of technology that's super fun to review and make videos of. Thank you. Thank you for watching the show and for supporting it in this very special way. I think a lot of this stuff needs to be preserved, and it's been a shit ton of fun playing it all. It takes a lot of time and energy to make this show, and while I love it, there's other things I want to do. It's not ending, but it will be changing. Now, Classic Game Room will be discontinuing CGR Undertow, so I'd like to make sure that everybody who's enjoyed the CGR Undertow show over the years thanks them somehow. Send him a message. Compliment Derek on his beautiful locks of ginger hair. He absolutely loves that.
But you guys were hammering out so much content, and you'd build up such a library. I mean, I don't know if anybody probably got hit as hard as you guys probably did. I mean, I don't, obviously know the numbers between theirs and yours, but I would have to imagine, just based upon the library, that your guys' community, flags or strikes were just like through the roof.
It was every day. It was every day. Mark was coming in very grumpy about flags and things, and videos that were old, videos from years ago, videos that the publishers sent us. Like Nintendo would send us a game to review, and then we would get flagged for copy. Like it was just it was a cluster. It was just a mess, and it forced us. It forced us to reroute. I mean, we were really on an upswing, building, getting bigger, and then sort of right in the middle of all that is when the first blow from YouTube, this kind of copyright stuff. And in retrospect, it's easy to kind of see the patterns. At the time, I sort of naively thought, we're going to be fine. But the writing, I think, was on the wall at that point in retrospect.
Yeah. Okay. So then you guys came back from YouTube, and then you guys were on for about, I want to say about like a year and a half, about 2 years before, like I would say, kind of the big shift, like CGR Undertow kind of shuts down, and then Mark kind of goes into different territories with like his books and all that kind of stuff. So how was kind of those last 2 years?
Really hard.
Yeah.
We went from a small business where there were several people in there to, at the end, it was me and Mark.
Right.
And the office. So there were 5 people in there all total, after a time when there used to be 15, And it was hard because I watched one by one, you just had to let people go.
Yeah.
And if not get let go, people just left because it became so stressful.
Right.
In my case, like I said, I used to not edit video at all. Mm-hmm. When our editors left, now all of a sudden I'm doing the whole process.
Right.
And it was really hard. I'll never forget the day that I was called into the office, and kind of the head of the the show, told me, hey, we're gonna shut down here at the end of the year. It didn't hit me at the time. I don't think it hit me until months after that, like, this part of my life was over, and it's something that I still haven't gotten over. When you do something and you're as invested in it as I was for almost 6 years of my life,
right?
Which I always told people that if you did the math, that was like 1 of every 5 days of my life I worked for Classic Game Room. Like, if you divide. It became my baby. It became, I mean, we built that from nothing to 160,000 subscribers and millions of views. And, I would get stopped on the sidewalk because someone recognized me from Classic Game Room. This became my life, and it became something I was fiercely proud of. And losing it was, I still miss it. I miss it every day.
Banished from Earth, Classic Game Room broadcasts from the intergalactic space arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything.
It wouldn't be until a year later that Mark would announce CGR Mark III and a Patreon account to help fund future episodes that would provide longer, hypercut content. Unfortunately, the content on YouTube suffered as a result, with Mark taking a stance of providing once free content as now pay-to-view content. Mark would also, once again, reimagine his website in 2016 as a blog, removing years of user-created content, gone at all of the user reviews, and simply supplying links towards various social media accounts. This is when I unsubscribed from CGR. Mark effectively alienated a lot of his audience by creating a paywall. The recent quality of his uploads certainly didn't warrant the price for the content that he was offering, in my opinion. In addition, the huge amounts of games and consoles that were donated to his channel were effectively already paid for, and he had already got top tier editing equipment. The problem wasn't necessarily at YouTube, the problems were down to the individual wanting more money.
Thank you for watching. Follow Classic Game Room on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Patreon. Welcome to the club. It's the Lord Karnage Club, where I celebrate these backers on Patreon.
Now, for argument's sake, some people may say there were some genuine issues with ad revenue on YouTube in the mid-2010s, but this didn't stop other YouTube content creators from adapting and still spearheading along to this very day. For example, Angry Joe, G-Man Lives, Bithead 1000, etc. What didn't help Mark was that the rapid expansion of CGR in the past few years and the declining quality of his own uploads. Mark was just simply too stubborn to see the issues at hand. Patreon can be a very valuable source of income for content creators, but when it comes down to the viewer, the consistency and quality must be there, and in terms of CGR, in my opinion, I just don't think the consistency and quality was at hand.
Yeah, it's time for fishing! Woo!
Going back in terms of his YouTube channel, Mark would now change the intro to each of his YouTube videos to include the Mark III information, Patreon, and another comic book character that he'd drawn, Magnum Skywolf.
Classic Game Room is brought to you by Magnum Skywolf.
Despite all of the drama happening behind the scenes at CGR, the channel still gained over 430,000 subscribers in 2016, but I couldn't help but think that the growth has been stagnated by the bad decisions made by Mark Bussler. The more recent uploads weren't pulling in the kind of traffic of the older style CGR reviews, and I think Truxton and the overly animated demeanour may have contributed towards this.
It's a tough call. Do I play Truxton or do I play Vectrex? Or PlayStation 4? All of the above.
Another peculiar issue that I noticed during the 2016 period was the lack of video reviews for the then current and new video game releases. This would have massively helped CGR with engagement and reach over YouTube. Instead of reviewing new PS4 and Xbox One games in the Mark III season, Bussler started to lean more towards retro gaming exclusively rather than a mixture of the present and old, creating a niche audience and alienating previous subscribers that once viewed his content. Pushing forward a year later with over 470,000 subscribers, 2017 would see CGR cover a slightly broader range of topics, including comics and video game guides, etc. Unfortunately, the YouTube content suffered yet again, which would see such videos as the Super Mario Odyssey game guide review noticeably having bad audio in comparison to a video from 8 years beforehand.
Super Mario Odyssey, the Prima official guide. This is the collector's edition. Great looking book. Lots and lots of information. All the stuff about Super Mario Odyssey. And of course, while I'm here, I have to recommend the Truxton and Golden Axe guidebook, as well as my book, Ultramassive Video Game Console Guide 2, which has way more Sega Dreamcast than that book. Classic Game Room has been brought to you by the Ultramassive Video Game Console Guide, 230 pages of video games on Amazon.com, Retro Megatrex, and how to make a video game review show that doesn't suck.
Ironic. In 2018, Mark would announce and launch Classic Game Room 2085, an Amazon Prime exclusive show running for only one season, retaining all of the mannerisms and Truxton jokes from the past few years, sealed behind, yet again, a paywall. YouTube at this point was a place where Bussler would spam the CGR channel with video uploads containing t-shirts, CGR 2085 trailers, and drawings, all for his 470,000 subscribers, effectively disengaging with the fan base he built up over the past 10 years on YouTube, and the subscribers would now leave in the thousands. By the time it was 2019, the YouTube channel was renamed from Lord Karnage to Tome of Infinity. The subscriber count would now drop down to 450,000 subs. The CGR 2085 show was discontinued, pissing off the majority of the goodwill he had made with some of the patrons he still had remaining. If you put yourself into the position where you funded a show via crowdfunding only for it to be cancelled the very same year, I can imagine you would feel more than a bit burnt. Bussler decided to give it one last go during this time period, and the final phase would be named CGR Infinity, a 60-second show on TikTok and Instagram. Some of these episodes would arrive on YouTube, but the majority of the content is now being deleted due to negative feedback and, unfortunately, personal insults directed towards Mark Bussler.
Welcome to Classic. Whoa! What was that?
Oh no! We've been hit by a meteor!
The Intergalactic Space Arcade has been hit by a meteor!
Yes! A quasar meteor!
What's a quasar meteor?
A meteor that sends you into the vortex of insanity!
Welcome to the Vortex of Insanity, where you exist in every universe at the same time. What does that mean? That means you can be anything you want, because somewhere there's a universe where something is being you. I can be anything I want? Great!
I don't have the heart to tell him that he doesn't have arms with which to pick up the glass and drink himself.
Can someone get me a straw?
Oh, this is tragic. I feel terrible. I don't.
Once again, Mark's YouTube channel would be renamed from Tome of Infinity to Turbo Volcano, the t-shirt brand that he sells on Amazon, and then finally 80s Comics, as it's currently known at the time of this retrospective, disabling comments on the recent videos due to harsh personal attacks on Bussler. One rumour over the years that doesn't seem to go away, and I cannot substantiate, but I really hope it isn't true, is that some of the games and consoles that were donated to the Classic Game Room over the years were sold on. Potentially loads of software and hardware that were donated on the goodwill that would be used for review purposes may have never been played at all and were just sold on. As I've said, I cannot substantiate these rumours, so take it with a very fine grain of salt.
There's a look at the Classic Game Room map of global domination. Every pin represents a CGR fan or cat who sent something to the show, like Robocop or games. So thanks to everyone, and there's still a whole lot of pins to go up there, by the way. I'm very busy playing a lot of games.
Interestingly, Mark Bussler gives a rare insight with Pat Contri as to why he's tired of YouTube and the community, given his reasons to the countless changes and his stance on the media platforms of today.
So you think it's running course just in terms of the length of time you're doing it? You think the audience has changed? Are you tired of doing it in terms of the format? You just need to change, or a little bit of everything?
The primary driving factor here is what has happened to YouTube.
Okay.
What has happened to YouTube? It used to be fantastic. It used to be a really great company to work with, and now, I mean, I've been doing production work for 20 years. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a company nosedive in terms of customer service and quality like YouTube. I mean, they have turned into the ultimate hive of scum and villainy. I mean, it's a disgusting digital cesspool.
Wow.
They treat their users like crap. I mean, I have contacted them, I don't know how many times, about the theft of my content, and just been flat out ignored. And are you talking
about re-uploads? Just people are just re-uploading your videos and making money off of them?
Taking my content. Yeah, I mean, they take my content, turn them into a top 10 video. And if they're a large channel, I typically have to, I got to go and basically I would have to spend the rest of my life going through 15,000 videos and hunting down time codes, which I'm not going to do because I can do other things with that time. So it's just been an unbelievably frustrating endeavor.
Are you talking about
I think everybody who works at YouTube should be ashamed of themselves and what they've allowed it to turn into.
Wow. So are you speaking to maybe
this terrible platform where kids eat detergent for hits? I mean, this is not a video service anymore. It's just a pile of shit.
Mark brings up some very valid points with regards to ad revenue on YouTube. Unfortunately, he loses sight on what YouTube is today and has not really got with the times. Unfortunately, the quality of his uploads has diminished over the years, and simply blaming it on tripods is just not a valid argument. Let's compare what Mark used to upload in the late 2000s to his more recent uploads, which were 60-second TikTok videos. You can see the diminish in quality over the years.
Game Room show from the future about the past being broadcast in the past to the future using a VHS technology that I don't understand and can't comprehend to begin with. But I'm reviewing Arkanoid today, a really old game that came out 10 years ago. Arkanoid, and this is the Nintendo Famo whatever version that plays with the paddle thingy that makes it feel like Breakout with lasers.
What the hell are you talking about?
It's electronic, tectonic.
Who are you talking to?
And with regards to silly videos on YouTube, as he would say tripod videos, you'll find that YouTube has always had stupid videos and people hurting themselves over the years. That will never change. Some people are idiots, some people like to just hurt themselves for the entertainment factor. You will never stop that. The issues weren't with other people's uploads, Mark, they were with yours. Ever since the cancellation of CGR as a YouTube channel, the subscriber count has steadily been dropping ever since with this announcement, with comments on various older videos asking for Mark to return to the gaming scene and relive the glory years of Classic Game Room. Looking back on the whole CGR era and how it imploded under its own weight, it's a fascinating story and an unfortunate tale. The problems from looking outside seem ever obvious enough, except to one person. The guy in charge. As time went on from the early 2010s, more content creators stood up and took the stand. The landscape for content creators is no longer the same as it was in the early days of CGR, when Mark had access to the best editing software, and when the average content creator such as myself only had Windows XP and Windows Movie Maker. Ironically, Bussler tried to change with the times, but instead went backwards, hoping everything he flung at the wall would stick. Unfortunately, Bussler's over-reactionary approach and lack of business acumen finally took hold of one of the pioneers in the internet landscape. Mark, I hope you are doing well and enjoyed leaving behind a 20-year legacy that has inspired countless other content creators on YouTube and around the world. It must be something that you are very proud of. CGR may be no more, but at least we have the classic videos to look back on. Take care and thanks for tuning in.